My name is Lawrence Lessig, and I'm a professor of law at Harvard Law School. Well, I mean, it's first important to understand the substantive solution. Like, what should we be aiming for? And if the problem with our current system is that a tiny slice of America funds campaigns, the solution is to make it so all of America is funding campaigns, so that when congressmen are dependent and responsive to their funders, they're also dependent and responsive to America because America is the funder. So some version of a small dollar-funded campaign system, I think, is critical to bringing about a democracy we could trust again. So what is the mechanism that might bring about that solution? Well, I try to struggle with a couple of obvious facts about political reform in America. Number one, in the last 100 years, it has been president-focused. Reform comes from the president. The last time reform came from Congress was the Reconstruction Congress, and that's only because the leader, the president, had been assassinated. So we need a president who can push this issue credibly. And I think one of the problems is that Barack Obama sounded like he was going to push this issue, and then first day in office he became not the reformer, but the kind of let's figure out how we can muddle through with the existing system. So I talk about ways to bring about a president committed to reform that we could believe. Number two, I think we've got to begin to terrorize congressmen into recognizing they need to reform, and peaceful terrorism in the sense of things we could do to congressmen so that they are afraid of not addressing this issue. And I think we still need to think about what those strategies are. But I think the most important long-term solution here is to recognize that it might take the invocation of a way of amending the Constitution that we've never actually seen. And that is the Article 5 convention process, where states call on Congress to call a convention that will then propose amendments to the Constitution. Now, that might be necessary because the other way of amending the Constitution is controlled by Congress. Congress gets to decide which amendments to propose. So unless we can get a system Congress can't control, I think we've got to worry that Congress will never have the incentive to make the kind of reform that it needs. So all of these are kind of outsider reform movements. And I think the critical thing is to recognize that the outsiders, the kind of sovereign, the people who are not really in the business of producing political wannabe congressman types, but instead, interested in living their life, those outsiders can begin to think about a way to bring about the pressure that they can bring to bear on the system to force the system to change. So I think about the convention not from the perspective of the probabilities of its happening, but more from the perspective of it's the only thing that would work. So given it's the only strategy that would work, and we've got to find a strategy that works, this is the thing to work on. If we had a convention and it were structured in the right way, I do think that it would evolve an understanding of reform that could address the fundamental issues of reform that we need to address. And I would be pushing strongly to think about ways in which we could structure that convention so that it produced the right kinds of reforms. So we shouldn't have a convention that basically deals with issues that the political system is able to deal with. I think we should have a convention to deal with issues the political system is not able to deal with. And so I would address, I would think that we could get a reflective understanding of that, to get a convention to propose those kinds of amendments, and then begin the process of trying to ratify them through the political system. Well, the call for a convention is actually happening right now, mainly from conservatives, but increasingly liberals too. Activists, politicians, some law professors, but not many. Law professors are not going to change the world. So I think the most interesting political opportunity with a convention call is that people can be calling for a convention for any number of reasons. As long as they use the same form and states vote for this call, then Congress has to count it, and Congress counts to 34, then Congress has got to constitute a convention. So I think that the process is to get these different political factions to recognize how there's a potentially common strategy here that could at least give them the opportunity to have a platform to put forward their substantive views of what reform is needed. And once we have that platform, actually perhaps think about how to bring about those amendments. Well, I certainly believe that the long-run solution has got to include giving Congress, again, the power to limit, but not to ban, independent expenditures by corporations and individuals alike. So I think that reform has to happen. But the only way we're going to get to a place where that reform is plausible is if we have a cleanly elected Congress first. So I also think we ought to talk about how to get public funding into the system so that we have a Congress that's focused and talks about the difference between being elected by the tiniest slice of the 1% and being elected by all of the people contributing in the way that they would under one of these systems. We have to do both of these changes at the same time.